Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I'm reading a lot of creepy stories here, and every time I think, I have to tell what's happened to me that night. So here we go. I just want to say that English is not my native language, so I'll do my best, but I'm sorry if I make some mistakes. I'm a female, and this story happened a couple of years ago when I was maybe 18. We used to party at a friend's house a lot during the weekends, and this night, the party wasn't in the city that I lived in, so I and a couple of friends need to take a shared taxi to go home. I was the one who lived the furthest away, so the last one in the taxi. As many times before, we arrived to the roundabout at the start of my street, and I told the taxi driver, "It's my street, I can leave here. Thank you, and good night." And then I start to walk, a little bit drunk, not gonna lie, and I just put my headphones to listen to some music. I feel safe in my own street, but it's a very long street, so I have to walk maybe 3 minutes to my house. 30 seconds after I start, the taxi comes back next to me and the driver lowers his window. I took my headphones out and then he said, "Hey, come back to the car. 3 men started following you and they just put hoods on." First, I find it weird. It's my street and it's a very safe neighborhood, so it doesn't make any sense to me. I looked back and then I froze. I saw 3 men wearing black or at least dark clothes and hoods walking very fast in my direction. I jumped in the car and the taxi driver dropped me off to my door. I talked about it the next day to my father and then I told him, "Maybe they just want to steal my phone or something?" And I remembered him answering me, "If it was just to steal a smartphone, they wouldn't put hoods on." And still, it scares me when I think of it. So first, to the taxi driver who stayed vigilant when he dropped off a young girl, thank you so much. You're my hero. And second, to the 3 psychopaths who decided to follow an 18-year-old girl with hoods, let's not meet and fuck off. Some horror stories don't involve ghosts, monsters, or curses. Sometimes, the scariest thing is someone with a smile. This story takes place in Nagoya, a city in central Japan, known for its castles, industry, and vast suburban sprawl. Nagoya blends modern development with long stretches of quiet residential roads. And if you're driving alone in one of those outer districts, especially at dusk, well, sometimes the scariest thing is who's watching you when you stop at a light. This happened about 15 years ago. I was driving home after shopping at a large suburban complex outside of Nagoya. I'd bought a lot of clothes, groceries, some small electronic devices, and I was in a good mood. I was humming to myself behind the wheel, and I was relaxed and with my bags full of plans. It was a clear afternoon, just starting to turn golden. I pulled up to a red light, and that's when I noticed him. A man, maybe my age, clean cut. He was walking along the pavement, and he stopped when he saw my car. He smiled, then casually walked right up to my window and then motioned for me to roll it down. Something about him seemed overly familiar, like he expected me to cooperate. I know it was careless, but back then, I didn't think much of it. So I cracked the window about 10 centimeters and then asked, "Yes?" But then, his arm lunged through the gap. He reached inside and then started grabbing for the door lock. I screamed, loud, and he froze then laughed like nothing had happened. "Hey, sorry. I saw your plate. Said you got his car in Owari Komaki? Thought you might be heading past Komaki Station. I figured that I would hitch a ride." And just then, the light turned green. I snapped the window shut and I said, "Sorry, I'm in a hurry." And then I drove off. In the mirror, I saw him yelling. He picked something off the ground and then threw it at the road, and his smile had twisted into open rage. About 10 minutes later, I hit another red light, this time much closer to home. And there he was, again. He knocked on my window hard. Somehow, he had followed me. Back then, Nagoya still had plenty of roaming taxis. He must have gotten into one and told the driver to tail my car. This time he was shouting, slamming his hand against the glass. "Get out of the car!" I should have driven away, but instead, I pulled over and I got out. Even now, I can't explain why. I know it was so stupid. He then stormed over furious. "You did pass Komaki Station. Why didn't you stop?" I was panicking, but then I remembered something, anything, to put some distance between us. This is my dad's car," I stammered. He always says that I can't give rides to strangers." He blinked. His face shifted. "Oh, that's it? Well, why didn't you just say so?" And then he laughed. "Man, I wasted taxi fare for nothing. All right, how about you make it up to me? Buy me a drink or something?" My skin went cold, and my voice came out without thinking. "My mom always told me don't treat strangers and don't accept anything from them either." He then smirked, stepped closer and said, "Wow, strict family, huh?" And then his eyes darkened. "Honestly, when I first saw you in the car, I thought maybe we could have a little fun. You know, go somewhere private, spend the night somewhere." He looked me up and down and then added, "So, you a virgin?" I could barely breathe. I forced a nod. Yes, and I'm already late. My mom's gonna be furious. I really have to go." He paused. Then, almost mockingly, he raised a hand and said, "All right, all right. Take care of yourself, yeah? Stay safe. And hold on to that innocence." He then turned and walked away like nothing had happened. Even now, years later, just remembering that moment makes my hand shake. He was unpredictable, calculated, like he had a whole script ready, just waiting for the chance to use it. It wasn't a ghost, it wasn't a monster. It was just a man. And that's what makes it worse. Because monsters don't follow you in taxis. Monsters don't smile at red lights. Monsters don't ask questions that you're too afraid to answer. But people do. Stay alert, trust your fear, and please, never roll your window down for a stranger. My friend has an older sister, and we all think she's being stalked. It's ongoing, but I want to share what's happening currently. My friend's sister has been staying with my friend for a while now to get away from it all and repel her stalker. She said that it's like living in a nightmare. I wanted to do something nice for her, so I offered to take them both out for dinner to take their minds off of things. We sat down to dinner, and things were going well until I saw my friend's sister's face drop. She began to tremble. I felt bad for asking them to come out. Maybe it was too soon. And then she muttered, "He sat behind me." I looked behind her and I saw an old man with an unnaturally creepy smile, and he was peering towards our table. He made me feel nauseous. He was just gross. He was the stalker. My friend had seen this guy following her sister before, so we were beyond it being a coincidence or a case of paranoia. My friend had had enough, and she stood up and went over to his table and then said loudly, "If you don't stop following my sister, I'm going to call the police." A few tables of people looked over, but the old man was just sat there smiling that inane smile. After a few moments, he got up, stepped away from his table, and then left. His expression didn't change. He just kept smiling. We thought that bit of public embarrassment might be enough to put the creep off and make him leave my friend's sister alone. We were convinced that it would work, and it turned out to be a correct prediction. Over the coming days, we would all joke about how easy it was. Everything came to a standstill for her sister, and a sense of normality was resumed in her life. However, just as soon as it ended, it seemed to start again. This time, the old man's target of torment was different. This time, he was stalking my friend and not her sister, and he was a little more cunning in his method of stalking this time around. The old man began to haunt her life. He would just appear in any place she went, but always at a distance or appearing inconspicuous. I will give you some examples. If she was out taking a walk or simply heading home, the old man would appear on his bike, riding towards her from behind her. He would smile that creepy smile as he passed her by. He would be there during a rush hour in the subway where crowds are gathered, and it made her feel as if she had no escape from him. In places where it was difficult to move or get away quickly, she would see that weirdo and smile. Enough was enough. My friend went to the police, but unfortunately, they weren't able to help. They said that because he hasn't actually done anything except smile at her and her sister, they couldn't do anything. She left the station frustrated and with a feeling of vulnerability. The old man and his behavior got worse. He was everywhere. She thought that the police might have been able to intervene when she saw him at college campus, but again, they weren't able to help or offer any kind of protection. To the untrained eye, he was just an old man who was walking around smiling. I mean, what's the harm in that? She tried to mobilize all her friends to help to discourage his behavior, but to our surprise, some of her friends didn't believe her. They said that she was grasping at straws. She must have felt quite alone at that time, but I believed her though. I had first-hand experience. I saw that creep with my own eyes. Plus, anyone who knew my friend well enough would say that she is far from a liar or an exaggerator. It was helpless. Every day she grew more nervous and worn down, and every day the old man just smiled at her. He never did anything. He just watched her and smiled. She eventually dropped out of college and has grown less and less responsive to my calls and also my messages. I haven't really heard from her lately, and it's really worrying me. I feel as if we are right on the edge of something happening. Maybe I should speak up and yell at him, like she did for her sister. But if I did that, wouldn't he just start stalking me? I don't know. Recently, I got in contact with her sister and I asked how she was doing. She thought that she was just wrapped up with studies. She didn't know what had been going on. I don't know what will come of this, but I am hoping that she is just laying low for a while. And I hope that the creep hasn't escalated his stalking. It was summer break, and we, my family, didn't go on any trip, unlike every break. I was just 8 years old, and my younger sister was 3. We were playing along with other kids who lived in the same building as us, just on different floors. The building is not exactly an apartment building. It's more of a multi-storied house. The front gate is a bit further from there and the only entrance and exit of the building. So, since we were downstairs and playing, anybody who would enter or exit the building would be visible to us, and we would greet them because every tenant knows us and we know them, as well as their family members who might visit them. A new person visiting any tenant is rare but not impossible. Right adjacent to the big entrance gate is a small old-style window with a grill, but it has a small opening at the bottom. We were all playing, but then I got tired and I sat on one of the chairs placed at the porch-like place. I'm not sure what to call it, to be honest. From where the window thingy falls on my right side, and I can see it as well as the gate clearly. I was just looking out when I noticed a man staring at the gate, which looked similar to this. So basically, he was able to look at my sister and friends through it. It concerned me when I realized that he wasn't even trying to look away and just staring at them blankly. I turned around from where I was sitting to signal my friend to move to the other side away from his sight, which she didn't understand. Frustrated, I turned back and I was about to stand up when my gaze fell on the guy, and he was now staring at me. My body froze, and I could feel fear creeping up on me. I couldn't move. I don't know why I stared back at him. And suddenly, he started smiling. And when I say smiling, I mean full-on grinning from ear to ear. That scared the soul out of me, and I mustered some courage. I then got up and I ran towards my friends. I didn't tell them anything, and I just asked them to go upstairs with me, which thankfully they did without questioning. I didn't tell anything about this to my parents because I thought that they would stop me from going downstairs to play. The next day, we again came to play and I looked through the window just to make sure that he wasn't there. Fortunately, he wasn't. Or so I thought. 15 minutes in, I spot the guy again. He was again standing at the very spot and staring at us, at me. I tried to play it cool because my friends knew nothing about him, but I couldn't for long and then we went back again. From what I remember, this happened for 3 to 4 days, and now my friends started to complain about how I don't let them play and that they have to come back earlier than they are supposed to. On the 5th day, or 4th, I don't remember correctly, I made up my mind to not pay attention to him and just focus on playing. We were playing cricket that evening and I was batting. I hit the ball hard, causing it to go over the gate, which was a very normal thing. And as per rules made by us, the one responsible must fetch the ball. My heart started beating because I could see his grin getting wider and creepier. He went towards the ball on the road and then picked it up. He then held his hand out, gesturing for me to come and take it. I was shit scared at this point, but I had to go, so I did. And as soon as I reached to take the ball from his hand, he bent, coming close to my ear, and his words are still ringing clearly in my ears till this day. He said, "I'm a good man. Look at the window when you go inside. I'll leave something for you." That sent shivers down my spine, and I ran with the speed of light. After we were done playing, I saw him sliding a piece of paper from that little opening. He then looked at me, grinned, and then waved goodbye. I grabbed the paper and I opened it. He had written his phone number and asked me to call him sharp at 2 in the afternoon, that he knew my parents would be asleep by that time. It was also written that if I don't do it, my friends' lives would be in danger. As an 8-year-old, I didn't know any better, so I called him through my mother's phone. He picked up the call, and I didn't have the courage to say anything, so I was silent. He said, "You're a good girl. Just like me, you should come stay with me. Come outside. I'm waiting to pick you up." Because I live upstairs, I went to the balcony and he was actually standing near the gate, looking directly at me and waving and smiling. I couldn't contain it anymore, so I started crying and I disconnected the call. I ran inside and I bawled my eyes out in my room. Thankfully, my mother didn't wake up and I cried it all out. I didn't go out for the next few weeks and everybody kept asking me about it. I still didn't tell them though. That guy stopped coming too. I don't remember the time he stopped coming, but he did and I was relieved. Eventually, this experience started fading and I grew up. Fast forward to 10 years, I was 18 and my mother asked me to buy some snacks. I took my sister and then we went out. The shop that I had to go to was at the end of the road, several houses away, so not too far. I was standing in a queue when I felt uncomfortable because of the man standing behind me, because he kept pushing me. Annoyed, I looked at him, only to realize that it was the same man. My face went pale, and I could feel my heart throbbing in my throat. I tried not to panic and I calmed myself down by telling myself that he couldn't do anything in public, that there were tons of people there and that gave me a sense of security. And as soon as my order came, I took out my wallet hastily to pay, but he beat me to it. The owner looked at him weirdly and then at me, because I was a regular there and he was seeing this man for the first time. I paid for it anyway, and the owner politely asked him to take his money back. I gave the bag to my sister and I asked her to go home to inform our mom about a man following us. And just in case that he attacks, I'll have a backing and she would be safe too. Our house is within the vision range of the shop, so I waited for her to get inside. And now, it's my turn to go home. As soon as I stepped out, the man followed me and said something like, "You're a beautiful lady now. Let's catch up." I kept walking and walking, but now they were far from the shop and he started speed walking and I had to walk faster. I could feel goosebumps all over my body. I started running and I could see him catching up to my speed when the owner of the shop called for him loudly, saying that some of his money was still at the counter and asking him to come back, which gave me enough time to get inside and lock the gate. I haven't seen him since that day and it's been 2 years. I'm 20 right now and I hope to never meet him anywhere in the future. I hope I never see him again. I don't know why it has instilled a paranoia in me and I dread seeing him when I turn 28. Update. I told my mom everything after that because my dad lives in another city for work. I didn't tell him since it would make him hella worried and possibly affect his work. My distant uncle is a local cop and is quite close and trustworthy. We tried finding the creepy guy after that but couldn't. He literally vanished in thin air. We also asked the shop owner about him, but he said the guy came back, took his money, and then went away. Nobody else paid any attention to this guy, so we couldn't find anything. I go to college by public transport, so I have to walk around 1 kilometer to reach the stop. I take the other road, which is opposite to the road that leads to the shop. It does take longer comparatively, but I feel better at least. Not once have I seen that guy or felt anything creepy since then, which is a relief. But again, I'm kind of paranoid every time that I step out, though I do carry pepper spray and a sharp keychain with me all the time. About moving out, well, we can't afford that just yet. Possibly after I complete my degree, which still has 3 years left. This happened around 7 or 8 years ago. I had just moved from the countryside to Chiba to start university. I was 19 at that time, young, excited, and a little naive. It was my first time living alone. The apartment was a rundown one-room place, one of those 1K units, just a single room, a small kitchen and a bathroom. A second floor, no elevator, and it was cramped, dusty. The walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors fart. But honestly, I kinda liked it. It felt like mine. And after a few months, I settled in. I got used to campus life, even got my first boyfriend, and things were good. But that's when I noticed the neighbor. She was this really pretty woman, probably in her late 20s, early 30s. She looked like the kind of office worker you'd see in a commercial, always polite and always quiet. But there was one thing about her apartment that stood out. Right next to her front door, there was a narrow frosted glass window, about 70 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters tall, with these vertical bars across it. It was the kind of window that you would barely notice unless you look closely. And she had it completely covered up with flyers, layer after layer, taped across the glass like she didn't want anyone looking in. I pointed out to my boyfriend one day and then joked, "What's up with that? Think she's hiding a secret or something?" We laughed, and then we agreed that the next time we saw her, we would ask about it. And we did. But her answer changed everything. She said, "Oh, yeah, I feel a little awkward about this. I'm sorry, but I guess it would be wrong to keep this to myself. There's some guy that's been trying to peek in through that window. He comes in the middle of the night, and then he puts his face right up against the glass." She says that he doesn't knock, doesn't say a word, and just stares inside. We were horrified. I told her, "Look, my boyfriend's around a lot, so if anything happens, just bang on the wall or call out. We'll come over right away." She smiled and then thanked us. And about a month later, she was gone. No goodbye, no notice, just vanished. Moved out like she was running. And then something horrible began. It started happening to me. One night I was alone, laying on my bed, scrolling on my phone just trying to fall asleep. That's when I heard something. A sharp, metallic tap on the door. It wasn't a knock, it wasn't the doorbell. It sounded like something hard, metal, lightly hitting the door. And I just froze. Now, keep in mind, this was a tiny apartment. If I left the kitchen door open, I could lie on the bed and see the front door without even getting up. So I turned my head just slightly and watched as the door handle slowly started to turn. It was one of those horizontal handles that you have to push down to open, and it was moving, soundlessly, downward. My mind went blank. I just stared at it, trying to remember. Did I lock it? Please, please tell me I locked it. I had. I was sure I had. Still, I needed to do something. So I reached over, grabbed a shoe, and I slammed it against the glass sliding door next to the kitchen. Then bang! The door handle immediately stopped moving. and then it slowly lifted back into place and everything went still. I didn't breathe, didn't move. I didn't even want to blink. I called the police the next day, and they said that they would increase patrols and make a note of it, and that was it. The second time it happened was a month later. Again, I was alone, but this time, there was no slow buildup. There was just the sound of someone trying to open the door hard, like they thought that it was unlocked and they were trying to force it. I jumped out of bed and I ran to the peephole, and there was someone standing there, wearing a bucket hat pulled low over their face, motionless, just standing there facing my door. I felt my whole body break out in goosebumps, and I backed away slowly, got on the floor, and tried to keep my breathing quiet. And with trembling hands, I called the police. You'd think they would rush over, right? Nope, they said. Can you check again? Is the person still there? Can you try to describe them? I wanted to scream. You want me to stick my face near the door again? Are you out of your mind? But I did it anyway, and he was still there. The same position, just standing and waiting. I gave a panicked description and I asked them to hurry. There was a police box just 5 minutes away, but they said that my area fell under a different jurisdiction. It took 40 minutes for someone to arrive. In the meantime, I called my boyfriend, who sprinted from his job and got there before the police did. And when they finally arrived, we told them everything. And my boyfriend, half laughing, half furious, said, "So, if she was half dead when you showed up, would that have gotten your attention?" And all they said was, "We'll patrol the area more frequently." And that was it. The third time was different. My boyfriend was actually with me. We were standing in the kitchen, casually washing dishes and talking, when suddenly, a gust of cold air blew into the room. We both shivered, and it took a second for us to register it. Wait, we didn't open a window, did we? We turned to look, and that's when I saw it. A pair of eyes right there, staring at us through the window. Our kitchen window, second floor, narrow ledge, no balcony. We just locked eyes, 10 seconds maybe, but it felt like a year. I couldn't speak. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. I tapped my boyfriend's shoulder, pointed, tried to say something, but the fear locked up my voice. And he saw it. He bolted out the door, sprinting down the stairs, and I followed a few seconds behind. By the time that I reached the hallway, I saw him too. The guy. He was already on a mountain bike, pedaling away. He had been prepared. We looked at the window from the outside, and one of the metal bars had been broken. The one thing that was supposed to keep people from looking in, he had snapped it. And the worst part? Our bathroom was right next to that window. It was an old apartment, so there was no changing room, and every time that I stepped out of the shower, I was completely exposed. He'd probably been watching for weeks at this point. We moved out immediately after that. Years passed. I eventually broke up with that boyfriend. I graduated, got a job, and life moved on. But one day, not long ago, we bumped into each other by chance. We had a coffee, caught up, and of course, the stalker came up. We laughed about it, said stuff like, "Well, he probably only started watching you after the pretty neighbor moved out." Like it was all just some messed up chain reaction. But then, my ex suddenly got quiet. He looked serious and then he said, There's something I never told you before. The night that I chased that guy on the bike, I didn't want to scare you, but he was holding a knife. like a long one, like a sashimi knife. I just stared at him. I thought about what could have happened if the door hadn't been locked, if I hadn't hit the glass, if my boyfriend had caught up to him. I thought about all of it. That whole area was full of cheap apartments for students, thin doors, no security, and easy targets. Was he a stalker? A pervert? A robber? Or something worse? I still don't know. But sometimes I lay awake at night thinking about that first sound, the metallic tapping, and I wonder, was he tapping the door with his knife? And that building, it's still standing. Let's just hope that the police did increase their patrols. When I was 20 and female, I worked at a Costco bakery as a cake decorator. Most days, it was just me and one other person, a 35 male coworker for hours on end. He was a character. The best way that I can describe him is that he seemed like and had mentioned something along the lines that he had done a lot of drugs at some point and now saw the world in this weird cosmic way. I'm a pretty go-with-the-flow person, so I just humored his conversations. Pretty quickly, I got the vibe that he liked me. I'm not trying to sound full of myself, I think it was just really obvious. I think I mentioned that I had a boyfriend once, and he later told me that he likes girls with husbands or boyfriends, because that's his track record. He also said people have given him crap for liking younger girls, which is a big red flag. He started bringing me little gifts and making me lunch based on things that I'd casually said before. He would get way too excited when I came in, and at some point, he even figured out what car I drove, which freaked me out a bit. And after I quit, he started messaging me, mostly replying to my stories that I'll admit I responded a few times, just trying to be nice. But I regret it now. One day, he randomly sent me a bunch of pictures with my name on them, stuff that he had apparently come across over the past month. My name is pretty common, so I figured he was just collecting them whenever he saw it. He said that he thought he almost saw me somewhere in public and then panicked before realizing that it wasn't me. That honestly gave me the creeps. I've been uneasy about this from the very beginning. I'm sure he likes me, but I was honestly just being friendly. I don't know if this is something that you can even file a police report over, or if that would be too extreme. He also lent me a movie, and I really don't want to see him to give it back. We live in a pretty small town, so I'm scared that I'll run into him somewhere. What should I do? The first time this happened was when I was in middle school. When I was in 7th grade, I would ride the bus to either my house or my grandma's on Wednesdays, along with my cousins and siblings. Both houses are at the bottom of 2 hills and have long driveways. And every Wednesday, we would see a van parked at the top of the hill as we were getting off at Grandma's house. Once the bus left, the van would drive slowly past the driveway or pull in and watch us. One day, as we were getting off at my house, the van sped to the driveway and then pulled in as we ran as fast as we could to the door. As soon as we got inside, they sped away as they saw another vehicle at the house. My grandma started picking us up at the end of the driveway and they stopped. The second and third time this happened was when I was going to college. One night, I wanted some ice cream and I went to the grocery store. It was just about dark, but the parking lot was quite full as it was a small grocery store. My only option was to park next to a white truck. I'm slightly paranoid and I try to get out of the car and into the store as quickly as possible. As I was getting out of the car, I noticed the passenger door of the truck open and an arm tried to grab me. I booked it inside and I stay there until the truck leaves and an employee can walk me out. The next year, I began a job at Burlington. We had a regular customer that always came to my register. He seemed a little strange and never really talked to me. A few nights after I get off, I notice a vehicle parked near my car every night that doesn't belong to my coworkers. I brushed it off, but I stay aware. Often, when I got off, I would get wings from the next door. One night, as I'm waiting in my car for my order, I see this customer get out of this truck and then start walking toward me as he is fiddling with something in his hands. I forgot about my order and I just sped off, and I also quit the job shortly after. Now, I have been seeing the same man at every store I go to lately. I go out to eat, he's there. I go to the store, he's there. I go to the park with my daughter, and he's driving by. I never see him near my house or my work, so I'm unsure if it's just a coincidence. However, I'm starting to get scared to leave the house as I am scared that he is actually following me. Hi everyone, my name is Chris, I'm female, and I'm 29, and I own a little flower shop nestled in the heart of town. It's a small business, but one that I have poured my heart into. Flowers have always fascinated me. Their colors, their scents, the way they can speak volumes without even uttering a word. Every day, I wake up early, excited to spend my hours surrounded by their beauty, arranging them into bouquets that brightens people's lives. Running a florist shop is not just about selling flowers. It's about being part of people's stories. I make arrangements for weddings, birthdays, and even those somber occasions like funerals. Each order carries its own significance, and I feel honored to be a part of those moments in some small way. I have a few regular customers who pop in throughout the week, but most days, I enjoy a steady flow of new faces, people who wander in off the street, drawn by the fresh blooms that line in the shop windows. It's really a peaceful job, one where I get to express creativity and share a bit of joy with the world. But today, I'm not writing solely to share about my job. I'm writing about an experience that I had that I considered somewhat scary, creepy, disturbing. I'm not quite sure what word is best to describe it, so I'm just gonna leave my story here and let you decide. A few months ago, a new customer started visiting the shop. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about him. He appeared polite and reserved. He was asking simple questions about the different types of flowers and also their meanings. I was more than happy to help. I was enjoying the chance to share my knowledge and passion. He came in regularly, more frequently than most, and in each visit, he bought a small gift. It could be a single cookie, a little smiley note, always different from the last. I thought nothing of it initially, since those were very simple gifts. I thought that he just appreciated the work that I do. Lots of people enjoy having fresh flowers at home, so maybe it was to thank me for that. But over time, I started noticing a pattern. He was always there, lingering in the shop, watching me closely as I worked. He began asking questions that felt too personal, wanting to know more about my life beyond the shop. I tried to keep the conversation light and professional, always steering it back to the flowers and their care. But his interest in me felt different, and it was starting to make me uneasy. One day, as I was closing up, I noticed him standing across the street. He didn't approach or wave, he just stood there watching as I locked the doors. It left a knot in my stomach, a feeling that I couldn't quite shake off. What the hell is he doing? I tried to wave at him, but he didn't wave back or say anything, so I just walked on and headed home. I convinced myself that it was harmless. Maybe he was just having a rough day. But then, he started showing up outside of the shop. And I would see him in grocery stores, the park where I took my morning walks, even at the cafe that I frequented on weekends. It was hard to dismiss as a coincidence when it happened so often, almost like he knew my schedule. The unease grew into something more when I received a letter in the mail. It wasn't like the usual orders or thank you notes that I sometimes get from the customers. This one was different. It was addressed directly to me with no return address. Inside, it was a single photo of me, one that looked like I didn't know that there was even a camera, and it was on a day where I wasn't in the shop. It also had confessions of love and admirations, and there was no sign of who sent it at the bottom. Reading it sent chills down my spine. It was clear that someone was watching me closely, and I couldn't help but connect the dots back to him. The thought of having an unwanted observer tracking my life was frightening. It made the world feel smaller, less safe. I became more cautious, and I was altering my routine slightly, trying to avoid being too predictable, and I started leaving the shop at different times, taking alternate routes going home, hoping to shake off the feeling of being followed. But everywhere I went, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see him there. Despite the growing tension, I tried to maintain a sense of normalcy in the shop. My work was my refuge, a place where I could focus on beauty of the flowers and forget, if only for a moment, the creepy person or shadow or whatever that seemed to lurk in my life. But his presence was persistent. One evening after closing, I found a single flower left on the doorstep, a lily, my favorite. At first, I thought that it was just a kind gesture, but in context, and after everything that happened, it felt like something darker, a message meant only for me. Well, one night, everything was confirmed when he came into my shop again. I felt the chill, but I acted normal and professional, asking him with what I can help him with. And the words that came out of his mouth next was something that I kind of expected, but still gave me a shock and definitely frightened me. I can't remember it word for word, of course, but it was something along the lines of, "Why? Why are you not interested in me? Have I not been giving you enough attention? Am I not enough for you?" The way he said it wasn't sad. It was full of anger and desperation. I told him that I am not interested in being in any kind of relationship at all, since I am busy working on my business and my dreams, and that I am sorry for not being able to return his feelings, but I'm just not interested. His expression became dark after I said those, and he looked like he was coming closer to me. So I told him that I will be willing to call the police if he doesn't leave me in my shop alone. That must have snapped him out of whatever he was thinking. And then he turned around, but before he left, he said, "This isn't over." I'm not gonna lie. I tried my best to act brave, but damn, was I scared out of my mind. I knew that I needed to take action, especially with the threat he left. I reached out to a friend who understood my situation. I explained everything that had happened. It was actually a relief to talk about it, to have someone validate my fears. Together, we decided that it was the best time to involve the authorities. I reached out to the authorities and I filed a report. They said that they couldn't do much without proof. But then I remembered that these things happened in my shop that had my security cameras. I gave them access to it, and they were able to trace back not only the latest interaction, but even the past multiple occurrences when he came to my shop. I was able to file a restraining order against him, and everything went back to normal. I apologize if there wasn't something in my story that seems very scary or dramatic, but to me, it was one of the scariest things that I have ever been through. So, to the man who stalked me in my own flower shop, let's not meet again. This happened a while ago at Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi. I was there with a friend, just having a normal theme park day, riding coasters, walking around, grabbing food, the usual. But then things got really uncomfortable. It all started on the turbo track ride. Me and my friend got seated next to this Indian guy, probably mid-20s, full mustache, looked more mature than your average tourist. And after the ride ended, he started talking to us and asked if we wanted to hang out. We kind of laughed it off and then walked away without really answering him. That was our mistake. As we walked through the park, we kept noticing him nearby. It wasn't a coincidence. He was clearly following us. And every time that we stopped, he stopped. Every time we changed direction, he somehow ended up behind us again. Then came the questions. Where are your parents? Do you live around here? Are you from this country? Do you have any way to communicate with your parents? His tone wasn't friendly, it was off, like creepy, like he was testing how alone we were. And not trying to be offensive, but if you lived in the UAE, you know how some people from certain regions can sometimes get way too familiar or overly confident around others, especially younger people. That's exactly what this felt like. Way too comfortable, way too fast. Eventually, we made our way to Flying Aces, and I came up with a quick plan. I told my friend, loud enough for the guy to hear, that I felt sick and I wanted to skip the ride. We dipped into a nearby small shop instead, hoping to throw him off. We thought we lost him, but later, we sat down to eat at one of the restaurants in the park. We were finishing up, finally starting to relax. But then, we saw him again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. He had two other men with him, and they were clearly looking around the restaurant like actively scanning for someone. And then he pointed right at us, and all three of them started walking in our direction. We calmly stood up and walked off like we were heading to the restroom or something. As soon as we were out of view, we made a run for the nearest exit through the gift shop. They were definitely following us at first. We could feel it. But once we made it into the connected Yas Mall and then slipped into the crowd, we finally lost them. I still don't know what they wanted. It could have just been harassment, but it could have been something much sinister. All I know is I'm really glad that we trusted our gut and got out of there before whatever messed up thing we could have gotten into with that guy and his friends. The lesson is, If you're a young person in an amusement park, always stick with who you are with, whether it's just one friend or a sibling, and don't allow people to join you out of the blue, and don't make the mistake by giving the impression of you being okay with it. Don't be scared to say no, and make sure your parents know about it if someone starts following you or joins you, since anything can happen these days. My name is Fred, and I played in a small local band. We were nothing big, just a group of friends who jammed together and occasionally played gigs at bars and even local events around the town in the 1980s. Music has always been my escape, a way to express what words cannot, and I play the guitar, and my bandmates say that I've got a knack for it. The band came into existence somewhat organically. It started with Mike, our drummer, who I met through a mutual friend. We clicked instantly over our shared love for old rock bands. And then there's Jenny, our bassist, who joined after we heard her play at an event one night. Her skills were undeniable, and she brought a new groove to our sound. And lastly, we had Jesus on the vocals. He's got this raw, powerful voice that commands attention and has always been the face of our band. We don't play for fame or money, but for us, it's about the joy of making music together, feeling that rush when a song comes together perfectly. We usually practice in Mike's garage, surrounded by old posters and instruments that we've picked up over the years. It's comfortable, it's a creative space where our ideas flow as easily as the music. Our biggest audience is usually made up of familiar faces, our friends, our family, and some locals who enjoy our sound. We don't expect much more than that, really. So, when we started seeing a new face at every gig, it caught my attention. She was always there, front row, watching intently. At first, I thought she was just another music lover, but there was something about her. I'm not saying that in an I'm in love kind of way. It was a I'm feeling uncomfortable kind of way. She stood out not just because she was always there, but because she had this intensity in her eyes. It was as if she was trying to memorize every chord, every lyric. I'd see her mouthing the words to our songs, and it was flattering at first. I mean, who wouldn't want a dedicated fan, right? But soon, it began to feel more personal. Our band started gaining a bit more attention locally, thanks to some decent write-ups in the town blogs. And that's when she started appearing off stage too. After our gigs, while packing up our gear, I would spot her hanging back, waiting near the exit or outside the venue. Once or twice, she tried to approach, but with the noise and bustle, it was easy to slip away unnoticed. Despite the growing crowd, her presence became something that I just couldn't ignore. She started showing up at places where I wouldn't expect. I'd see her at my favorite coffee shop, sitting a few tables away, or at a park where I sometimes went to clear my mind. She never approached me. She just watched from afar with that same intense gaze. I brushed it off at first, convinced that I was imagining things or being paranoid, you know? After all, it was a small town, and paths were bound to cross. But when she started to appear outside our band practice sessions, any semblance of coincidence vanished. We would wrap up a late night session only to find her standing across the street, partially hidden in the shadows, watching us pack up. It was unsettling, this constant feeling of being observed, so I talked to the band about it, but they laughed it off, To them, it was just a harmless fan, maybe a bit over enthusiastic, but definitely not a threat. Jesus even joked that it was good for our image to have real fans. But something about it just didn't sit right with me. I tried to ignore it, hoping that she would lose interest and move on. But instead, things escalated. I started receiving anonymous notes left under the windshield wipers of my car or slipped into my guitar case when I wasn't looking. They were meticulously handwritten, filled with detailed descriptions of our performances and personal comments that felt too intimate, too informed. The notes made it clear that she knew more about me than a casual fan should. Little things about my life that were never shared publicly. It was as if she had peeled back layers to see things meant only for me. I became hyper aware of my surroundings, looking over my shoulder more often than before. The joy that I found in playing in front of a lot of people started slipping away, replaced by anxiety and discomfort. One night, after a particularly draining gig, I found myself alone picking up my guitar in the empty venue. The others had left already. I was a bit late since I had to battle with nature in the toilet. I'm sorry for that. Well, as I turned to leave, there she was, standing directly in the doorway. Her presence in the dim light felt almost surreal. My heart pounded as I forced myself to stay calm. I was pretending to check my phone as I moved towards the exit. She didn't say a word, she just watched with those intense eyes that haunted me for weeks. I slipped past her, out into the cool night air, hoping that the darkness would swallow me up before she could follow. This encounter really creeped me out, so I reached out to a friend of mine who was working in law enforcement, and I explained the whole thing. He took it seriously, which was great. He then offered some advice on how to document everything and stay safe, saying that they really couldn't do anything if I didn't have definitive proof. From that point, I took precautions. I was always making sure that I wasn't alone when leaving gigs or practices. I informed the band again, who finally understood the seriousness of the situation. They offered their support, making sure that someone was always with me, especially when going home late at night. But funny enough, after everyone and even myself was taking this more seriously, the sightings became less frequent, as if she sensed the shift that I was documenting stuff and observing her more seriously. Playing with my band is still one of my greatest joys in life, but it's different. I'm more cautious, more aware of how exposed we are on stage, even in our small town bubble. It's a strange balance, finding comfort in the spotlight while knowing what lurks just beyond. But it taught me the value of boundaries. Anyway, I just wanted to share this creepy old story of mine. I was compelled to right after joining Reddit and then discovering this sub. So yeah, stay safe everyone, and rock on. One sunny afternoon, my sister and I decided to go shopping at the local market. It was a busy day with people bustling about, some kids running around, and the usual chatter filling the air. We were standing in one of the aisles checking out the fresh fruits and vegetables when I noticed a man walking past us. He looked at me in a way that felt a bit odd. His gaze lingered a moment too long, but I just brushed it off thinking that it was just my imagination. We continued shopping, heading over to the bakery section to pick out some bread and some pastries. Yet, there he was again, standing a few feet away, watching me. I really tried to ignore him, convincing myself that it was nothing, just a coincidence. But as we moved to the dairy area, he was still there, keeping his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that started to make me uneasy. He had a stern look on his face, like he was upset or something. I whispered to my sister about what was happening, and she suggested that we walk around the store to see if he would keep following us. We meandered through different sections, just pretending to browse, but sure enough, he trailed behind us, maintaining that unsettling stare at me. My heart began to race a bit, anxiety bubbling in my chest. It felt surreal, like a scene out of one of those crime shows on TV, but it was happening in real life, right there in the middle of our small town market. When we finally finished shopping, I felt a mix of relief and lingering fear. We decided to inform one of the store employees about the man, and the staff member was helpful and kind, offering to walk us out to our car just to ensure that we felt safe. They apologized for the situation and promised to review the security footage to report the suspicious behavior to the local authorities. Well, I don't really know what happened to that, but I was never contacted by police. The encounter left me with a strange feeling, a reminder of how quickly an ordinary day can take a turn. It was unsettling to realize that such things could happen even in familiar places. But I think no one ever thinks that these things happen to them. It's supposed to be just the other people, right? I later tried to share this experience online, hoping to alert others to be cautious and more aware. But let's just say that I ran into some challenges. The post was flagged and taken down by the moderators, who accused me of spreading false information, which was kind of frustrating. All I wanted was to make sure others would be more vigilant about their surroundings, especially in places where they normally feel safe. So instead, I'm sharing it here. Please stay safe, everyone. Hi. I wanted to share this creepy experience that I had in university. For context, I'm a female. For a while, everything seemed fine at school. My classes were going well, and I was enjoying time with friends. But then, out of nowhere, strange things started happening. It began with small unsettling incidents. My things moved around and were at places that I'm sure I didn't leave them on. I thought that it was just my exhaustion or stress because of the exams coming up soon. But then some things went missing entirely. Not just random stuff at home that I could brush off, but things that were very personal to me, like my journal and some underwear. I know, it's a bit embarrassing. I also had this persistent feeling of being watched that I couldn't quite explain. It was unnerving, something like a shadow in the corner of my eye that vanished when I tried to focus on it. I really didn't know who to turn to. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I decided to confide in my longtime friend, Josh. We had known each other for years, and he had always been someone that I could rely on. A best friend, you can call him that. When I told him about the stalking and the weird experiences I was having, he was very sympathetic, and he suggested practical things to help me feel safer. He advised me to change the code on my locker and become more cautious about my routine, and for a while it felt reassuring to have his support. But despite these measures, the stalking and strange occurrences continued. Whoever it was seemed to know things no one else should, like the new combination to my locker. I couldn't figure out how they were doing it. Only Josh knew about the new combo. He was there when I changed it, and I trusted him completely. But as the incidents persisted, doubt began to creep in my mind. I had a theory, and I wanted to test it. I changed my lock combination without telling Josh, and after that, nothing in my locker was ever disturbed again. I stopped leaving a spare key under my mat and then changed the locks on my bedroom door, and nothing in my house, specifically my room, was disturbed again. Just to note, as I mentioned, Josh has been a friend for years, and he knew about the key under the mat since he visits my house from time to time, and there has been multiple instances when I was too lazy to open the door and I just told him to use the key under the mat. I felt a mix of relief and dread as the evidence pointed in a troubling direction. I began making other changes too, small things like varying my schedule and keeping details to myself. And each time, the stalkers seemed to be out of the loop, confirming what I was beginning to fear. My heart sank as I realized that Josh, my trusted friend, could be behind all of this. It was a difficult realization, but I knew that I had to distance myself. I started avoiding him, ignoring his texts and his calls, and I didn't respond when he asked to meet up. I blocked his number after he repeatedly tried reaching out. One day, as I was heading home, I noticed him waiting outside my house. Panic gripped me, and I quickly went inside, locking the door behind me. My dad was home early, and he noticed Josh loitering outside. He then went out to confront him, firmly telling him to leave. Josh eventually walked away after some stern words from my dad. And later that night, I sat down with my dad and mom and shared everything that I had pieced together about the stalking. My dad was furious and he wanted to confront Josh himself, but my mom and I managed to calm him down, and instead, he decided to call Josh's parents, explaining the situation and demanding that they tell Josh to stay away from me. After that call, the stalking incidents became less frequent. It was as if the message had finally gotten through. Over the next few months, everything stopped completely. I never spoke to Josh again, and part of me is sad about the loss of our friendship, but I also felt a profound sense of relief knowing that that chapter of my life is over. And here's the riddle for this video. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared because your fear feeds me.